There are moments in life when everyone around you thinks you've lost your mind. This is the story of one such moment, and the man who taught an entire village what faith really means. His name was Henrik, and he was 47 years old when he did the unthinkable. It was late November. The first snow had already dusted the hills surrounding the valley. The harvest was in. Every farmer had stored their grain, repaired their tools, and settled into the quiet rhythm of winter. This was the time for rest, for mending, for waiting. But Henrik walked out into his frozen field with a bag of seeds. His wife stood at the doorway, watching. After 20 years of marriage, she knew her husband was stubborn. But this was madness. "Henrik, what are you doing?" He turned, his breath making small clouds in the cold air. "Planting?" "It's winter. Nothing grows in winter." He smiled softly. "Not yet." Word spread quickly. By afternoon, neighbors had gathered at the edge of Henrik's field. He moved slowly, methodically, pressing seeds into the frozen earth. The ground resisted like stone, but he continued. Old Magnus, the village elder, shook his head. "Henrik has finally cracked. All those years broke him." Others laughed. One farmer shouted, "Hey, Henrik, should we plant clouds too? Maybe they'll rain gold." The laughter echoed across the valley. Henrik heard every word, but he didn't stop. He didn't defend himself. He just kept planting. That night, his wife broke the silence at supper. "Why are you doing this? You're making us look like fools." Henrik set down his spoon. "Do you remember the year the rains came late?" She nodded. Everyone remembered. Half the village nearly starved. "Do you remember who had food? The farmers who planted early, before anyone thought it was time, before conditions looked right. They planted in faith, not certainty. And when the rains finally came, their seeds were ready. But this is different. This is winter. Your seeds will freeze and die. Maybe. Or maybe they'll be exactly where they need to be when spring comes." Weeks passed. Snow fell heavier. Henrik's field became a blanket of white, hiding whatever foolishness lay beneath. The mockery faded. Henrik became yesterday's entertainment. Winter settled in with brutal honesty. It's a strange thing about winter. It reveals who prepared and who didn't. It shows what you built in abundant times. Henrik's family had enough. They'd stored well. And now, while others worried, Henrik sat by his fire carving toys for his children. He seemed at peace, almost annoyingly so. One harsh evening, young Lars from the neighboring farm came to Henrik's door. His father had sent him to borrow wheat. Their stores were running low. Henrik invited him in, gave what they could spare, and sent him home with extra. As the boy was leaving, he paused. "Mr. Henrik, everyone says you're crazy. They say you wasted good seeds." Henrik smiled. "What do you think?" The boy was quiet. "I think maybe you know something they don't." "No," Henrik said gently. "I just believe something they don't. There's a difference." January came, then February. The frozen world showed no signs of change. Henrik's field looked like every other field, dead, dormant, empty. But something interesting happened. Henrik noticed it first in himself. While other farmers grew restless, anxious for spring, pacing and worrying, Henrik felt calm. He'd already done his work. His seeds were planted. There was nothing to do now but wait and trust. In late February, old Magnus fell ill. The village took turns caring for him. On the evening Henrik sat with him, the old man finally brought it up. "Your seeds are dead, you know." Henrik nodded. "Probably. So why did you do it?" He thought for a long moment. "Magnus, do you know what the hardest part of farming is?" "The work?" "No, the waiting. The time between planting and harvest when you can't see what's happening beneath the soil, when you have to trust something is growing even though there's no proof. That's the part that breaks people." Old Magnus's watery eyes studied Henrik's face. "I planted in winter because I wanted to practice faith during the hardest season.
I wanted to learn to do the right thing even when conditions weren't perfect, even when everyone thought I was wrong. The old man was quiet for a long time. Then he whispered, "And if nothing grows?" Then I still learned the lesson I needed. But Magnus, I don't think nothing will grow. March arrived with the first thaw. Snow began to retreat, and one morning Henrik's wife came running from the field, breathless. "Henrik, come quickly." He followed her outside. There, in the corner of his field where snow had melted first, tiny green shoots were pushing through the earth. His seeds hadn't died. They'd been sleeping, waiting, getting ready. While other farmers were just beginning to prepare their fields, breaking up winter-hardened ground, Henrik's crops were already growing. They had a head start measured not in days but in months. By the time the village finished spring planting, Henrik's field was already green and thriving. The shoots that seemed so fragile grew strong. The roots, established during cold months, ran deep. When summer came, Henrik's harvest was the first ready, and it was abundant. The same neighbors who mocked him now came asking for his secret. He welcomed them all, shared what he'd learned, held nothing back. But his answer disappointed them. "There's no trick. I just planted when everyone said it was the wrong time. I worked when conditions weren't ideal. I trusted when I couldn't see results." One farmer protested, "But you risked everything. What if it hadn't worked?" Henrik smiled. "I risked seeds, but I gained something more valuable than crops." "What?" "I learned that growth doesn't happen on our timeline. I learned that the hardest seasons are often when the most important work gets done, underground, invisible, preparing. I learned that everyone will call you crazy when you plant in winter, but those same people will ask for your harvest in summer." The farmer walked away shaking his head. Some lessons can only be learned by living them, not by hearing them. Years later, young people in the village would point to Henrik's field when they talked about faith, about patience, about doing the work even when you can't see results. Think every winter, at least a few farmers began planting seeds in frozen ground, not because conditions were perfect, but because they'd learned perfect conditions never come. The seeds you plant in winter, in the dark, difficult, dormant seasons of your life, those are the ones that grow the deepest roots. Those are the harvests that last. Henrik grew old in that village, farming that same field, and on his last day, surrounded by children and grandchildren, someone asked what he was most proud of. He thought for a long moment. Then he smiled. "I planted when it was cold, and I learned to trust the spring." The lesson is simple, even if living it isn't. The work you do when nobody's watching, when conditions aren't perfect, when everyone thinks you're crazy, that's the work that matters most. Plant your seeds in winter. Do the work in darkness. Trust the process even when you can't see progress. Because spring always comes. And when it does, the only question that matters is this: did you plant or did you just wait?